The chains around her wrist were stained with blood. The crowd inside the Roman arena screamed for her death. She had already been scourged, stretched on the rack, burned against heated iron, and thrown before wild beasts. Men stronger than her had already collapsed beneath the torture. But somehow, the young enslaved woman still stood, and every time Rome demanded she deny Jesus Christ, she answered with the same words, "I am a Christian." Hey, I'm Caleb, host of the Cries of the Martyrs, presented by the Battlefront 511 podcast. You can now listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if these stories have impacted you, don't forget to follow, rate the show 5 stars, and share the podcast with someone else, because their voices may be gone, but their stories still cry out. The year was AD 177. The Roman Empire stretched across the known world like iron. Its armies conquered nations. Its emperors demanded loyalty. Its gods filled temples across every major city. And beneath the rule of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, hostility toward Christians appeared to be growing throughout parts of the empire. Historians still debate how aware Marcus Aurelius himself was of many local persecutions. But in the cities like Lyon, rumors spread through the street like poison. Some claim Christians angered the Roman gods. Others accused them of evil rituals. Fear turned into suspicion, suspicion turned into hatred, and hatred eventually turned to violence. Lyon sat in Roman Gaul, modern-day France. The city overflowed with merchants, soldiers, slaves, wealth officials, and towering Roman architecture. But the streets with noise and smoke, and hidden beneath the noise of the empire, Christians gathered quietly and praying, sharing meals, reading the words of Christ by candlelight. Among them was a young enslaved woman named Blandina. Roman society viewed her as insignificant. She was disposable in their eyes, the kind of person powerful men never noticed, but heaven noticed her. By day, she likely carried water through crowded Roman streets, cleaned the homes of her masters, and lived quietly beneath the weight of slavery. Somewhere in the middle of the ordinary life, she encountered Jesus Christ, and nothing would ever be the same again. So let's just do a quick recap. It's something that we've seen kind of in some of our other stories, and really we've seen this throughout history, even recently. I mean, this is something that's always been where propaganda starts. It focuses on a certain group. They begin to blame them for all bad things that happen, and you can get a mob going real quick. And once the mob starts, not too many people are going to stand up to the mob. There are many people that might not believe what the mob is doing, but their silence is like it's kind of like being participants in it. We've seen this with the Jews in the 30s, and how people, there was all this propaganda about them. And whenever anything went bad, or the reason why this country wasn't doing well, it was because of the Jews. And really, we know the reason why. And it's the same here. People are, there's bad things that are happening in these cities, and they're looking for someone to blame. Christians are angering the Roman gods, and that's why they're not getting the blessings. It's amazing to see the same stuff that happened 2,000 years ago still happening today, and we act like it's the first time we've ever seen it. If people could just read their history books, at least the history that hasn't been changed, you're going to see the same patterns happen all the time. Because that's how the devil works. He's not mysterious. He knows what he's doing, and it's a formula that has worked over and over again. Let's get back to the story. At first, the Christians of Leon survived quietly, but eventually mobs began turning against them. Believers were dragged from their homes, beaten publicly, interrogated, thrown into prisons beneath the city. The Romans did not merely want executions, they wanted Christians humiliated, broken publicly before the crowds. And when Blandina was arrested, the guards likely believed that she would surrender quickly. A young enslaved woman, already weak from prison conditions, the easiest victim among them. But they were wrong. The prison beneath Leon smelled of blood, mildew, sweat, and rusted iron. Chains scraped across stone floors while prisoners cried out somewhere deep in the darkness. One by one, Christians were dragged into the torture chamber. Then came Blandina. Roman officials demanded only one thing: deny Christ, burn incense to Caesar, swear loyalty to Roman gods, and the suffering would stop. But Blandina answered simply, "I'm a Christian." Then the beatings began. Now, we're going to go through some of the things that happened here to Blandina. Many Christians went through the same gauntlet that she is going to go through here. Many of them did not survive this. Even this opening torture scene that she's about to go through. From what I can tell, and it was hard to do this research just because it just talked about the stuff that happened, but not necessarily in the order that it happened. So in this part of the story, the accounts that I'm going to tell you are true, and they did happen, but I'm not 100% sure in what order they went. So this is the order that I put it in, because I think this is probably the most logical way that it went. And remember, this was something that almost all these Christians, they would do this one by one, so all the other Christians would see this happening. And they did this in hopes that they would deny Christ early on, but many did not. So what happened to her was this: leather whips tore across her back and shoulders again and again until blood ran onto the stone floor beneath her feet. Still, she refused to deny Christ. The Romans escalated the torture. Her body was stretched painfully across the rack, while ropes pulled against her waist and legs, forcing muscles and joints beyond their limits. The soldiers demanded that she denied Christ, but the answer never changed. "I am a Christian." It records that the torture became so relentless that the executioner themselves grew exhausted trying to break her. The empire that crushed nations could not break an enslaved Christian woman. Now, what's interesting about this, again, and all the accounts that I have read on this, all the research I did on this, multiple places said that they had to bring in new guards to beat her because they were visibly shaking because they were exhausted. These are grown men and soldiers. And like I said in the beginning, we don't know much about Blandina's appearance, but everything I read on her said she was a very small, enslaved woman. Probably, I mean, it's safe to say probably weighed no more than 110 pounds, maybe 115. So a very small woman, probably not much muscle on her. And she's being beat by Roman soldiers, and she's outlasting them. It's the Holy Spirit. We know what that is. We know it is the Holy Spirit. Why was the Holy Spirit keeping her alive during all this? Why wouldn't he just let her die instead of continually suffer more and more? And it's a question we can ask, but the answer really turns into, I don't know. I don't know why that would happen. But maybe it's because she wanted her death to be a great witness, one that 2,000 years later, a guy's going to be sitting in his room recording a podcast and still talking about it. Maybe that is why. And maybe she was good with that. Eventually, the public games began. Thousands packed the Palace of Leon. Crowds shouted from stone seats while vendors sold food and wine beneath the roar of the arena. People came for entertainment, for violence, for death. The Christians were dragged before the crowds, one by one. Then, Blandina entered the arena, bruised, bleeding, and barely able to stand, and still confessing Christ. The soldiers tied her to a wooden stake in the center of the arena floor. Then the gates beneath the arena opened. Wild beast entered the dirt. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the attack. But it never came. The animals circled her, growled, paced around her trembling body, yet refused to touch her. Confusion spread the arena. Handlers shouted. Soldiers attempted forcing the beast forward. Still, they would not devour her. To the Christians watching nearby, it felt as though God himself was strengthening her before the eyes of Rome. But this made the Romans furious. So, a few more accounts. I mean, these are things that I read, that they had brought over some of the beast and literally placed it on her. It said there were lions, bears. So I'm not 100% sure how that would have worked. So I didn't really want to put that in the story. But there were multiple accounts of them driving these animals as closely as possible to her. And the animals refused to eat her. It also said that some of the handlers actually put animals on her. Which animals it was, I don't know. But they refused to eat her. And again, we look at this. And telling the story is one thing, but imagine if you were a Christian. And again, they had Christians watch each person, right? So the next person in line was watching someone that was going through this because they were trying to break him mentally first. And it said that the Christians that were watching her, their faith strengthened even more. It's incredible. After the wild beast refused to eat her, they brought in an iron chair and they placed it above burning coals until the metal glowed deep red from the heat. Smoke twisted upward into the air as soldiers dragged. The crowd watched silently as soldiers dragged Blandina toward it. Her body was already shattered from the torture. Yet she still refused to deny Christ. The guards forced her against the heated metal. The smell of burning flesh spread the arena, while spectators recoiled in horror. Some turned away, others screamed for more. But through unbearable agony, her confession remained unchanged. I am a Christian. Rome could not understand her. Pain ruled the empire. Fear ruled the empire. Death ruled the empire. But not to this woman. So this next account I'm going to talk about, this was Ponticus. Honestly, I'm not sure he was part of these martyrs. And there's a whole group of martyrs that died during this time. And Ponticus, we're going to talk a little bit about him. But it said Blandina was like a mother to him. So I'm not sure if the accounts that happened here to Ponticus happened before Blandina or after she had gotten off the iron chair, if they decided because they knew that she was really close to him to have her watch Ponticus go through his torture and try to break her. But a lot of the accounts say that she was like a mother figure to Ponticus. So let's talk a little bit about Ponticus. Among the imprisoned believers was a 15-year-old boy named Ponticus. Now, I went with 15 because I've seen multiple reports. There was 15 and 14, so I went with 15 on this one. But know that it could have been even 14 years old. He was young enough that most boys his age would still be home with family instead of standing inside a Roman arena surrounded by death. The Romans showed him no mercy. Before his torture began, Ponticus was forced to watch the executions and torments of fellow Christians day after day. This would be like somebody coming in and grabbing the church, a certain church, right? Your local church. So you know all these people, okay? And I'll even say this, I believe that these people would be even closer because they had to do things secretly. They had to truly trust each other. They had to trust each other in a way that we don't have to trust people. They were trusting people with their lives. Because if something got out, we're hearing what they would have to go through. So they knew these tortures and stuff were waiting for them. So these are the people that they're dying with here. And it said that they would basically take one person, run them through the gauntlet, and then once that person died, they brought the next one in. So we're going to go back here. It says, before his torture began, Ponticus was forced to watch the executions and torment of fellow Christians day after day. The goal was psychological destruction. Fear before pain. The Romans hoped terror alone would break him. But Blandina stayed beside him. Though her own body had been beaten, burned, scourged, and broken, history remembers her encouraging the young boy consistently, almost like a noble mother strengthening her son. Then Ponticus was brought into the arena. The torture became relentless. The executioners moved him rapidly from one agony to another without giving him time to breathe or recover. He was scourged, exposed to wild beasts, dragged through public torment before screaming crowds. Then came the heated iron chair. The 15-year-old boy was forced against burning metal while the arena watched. Still, he refused to deny Christ. The crowd became enraged by his endurance. So the torture continued. Again and again and again. Until finally, after enduring what historical accounts described as the whole round of tortures, Ponticus collapsed beneath the endless suffering. It basically says he was physically exhausted to death. And beside him stood Blandina, still faithful, still encouraging others to endure, which this really made Rome mad. So they wanted to do something a little different now with Blandina. She had already went through all of this and is somehow still alive. So Blandina survived the scourging, the rack, the beast, the iron chair, and the psychological torment of watching the young boy die. So Roman decided to try one final spectacle. They wrapped her inside a heavy net like an animal prepared for slaughter. Then they suspended her before the crowd. The gates opened once more, and a massive wild bull exploded. Dust erupted, beneath the hooves as it charged directly toward her. The impact hurled her violently through the air inside the net. The bull rammed her broken body. Again, it tossed her before thousands of spectators. And again, the animal struck while the crowd roared. So she's basically being gored and tossed around by this bull. And this went on for a while. And finally, they got the bull put away. And they realize that she is still alive. And once again, she refused to deny Christ. So after every torture failed, Rome finally ended her life with a blade. Not because Blandina abandoned Jesus Christ, but because she never would. Afterwards, the bodies of the martyrs were burned and their ashes scattered into the Rhone River in an attempt to deny Christians a proper burial and erase their memory forever. But Rome failed. Rome believed power came through fear, through violence, through making examples out of the weak, and standing before the power of the empire. Blandina should have been forgotten, an enslaved woman, a disposable life in the eyes of Rome. Ponticus should have disappeared into the history as just another terrified child crushed beneath the violence of the arena. But that is not what happened, because while Rome ruled through force, these Christians endured through faith. Their empire beat them, burned them, dragged before crowds, threw them before beasts, and still they would not deny Christ. Rome destroyed their bodies, but it could not conquer their souls. And now, nearly 2,000 years later, the empire that once terrified the world has fallen into dust. Its arenas are ruined, its emperors are dead, but the names of Blandina and Ponticus are still remembered, not because they fought with swords, but because they remained faithful when the entire world demanded surrender. And maybe that's the lesson their story leaves behind. That faith is not proven when life is easy. Faith is proven when everything else is stripped away, and Christ is still enough. Because their voices may be gone, but their stories still cry out. Hope you were inspired by this story. If so, please share this with a family member or friend. And don't forget to give us and rate us 5 stars on Spotify. We are now also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. So please follow us on all of our social medias. Cries of the Martyrs. So until next time, and remember, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.